Alright, Ken, so here is your pole position. The board worked. It had some fried pins on the video board. Ground and +5 were completely gone, so even if you did plug it in, you wouldn't have gotten anything out of it. And from the looks of the transformer assembly, you weren't going to get this thing to light up at all. So anyway, what we're doing here is we're adding that type of power supply. So it's got the two 9 pins on it with +5 ground, plus and minus 12 and -5. And we're only using +5 and ground. So it doesn't need to have all those voltages, just +5 and ground. And we're doing two things here. Well, more than two, but we're getting 5 volts and ground to the board in two separate ways. So there's your connector coming off the supply. Got this harness. It's going to run back into the cabinet harness, where this connector here would normally plug in down here to the power supply. It is now plugging into this, what I call a bypass harness. By bypass, where you're bypassing the 5-volt output from this supply. Alright, but we do have to have the grounds common between the power supplies, and then the other two wires there for audio. So each of these power supplies still have to be in the cabinet for audio amplification. And in order for everything to work correctly, the grounds have to be common between this supply, and that supply. And that's what this is doing. So not only are we getting ground and +5 from this direction, we're also getting it in this direction. This is most likely where the board's going to draw 100, not 100% of its current, but most of its current. So you can't see it, but that's actually soldered to the video board. We're still getting +5 and ground here through there. So if you did want to plug another board into this cabinet, you could. It just won't have these mating harnesses. I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you really have to, but this board seemed pretty solid, and it's pretty clean too. Usually this section of the board is destroyed, and this board's in pretty good shape. So alright, so that is power to the video board. Now we're going to do the same thing with the CPUs. So here's our connector from our new power supply. And then direction number 1, it's heading back into the harness. So it's providing ground +5 into the factory harness. We're bypassing a few wires here, but the wires that we're bypassing are part of what's called a sense circuit, and we're not using the sense circuit anymore. So no need to wire those in. Again, grounds have to be common, and then the last two wires there, the brown and white, are for audio. Now I've marked these supplies: power supply number 1, power supply number 2, and then I marked this connector, power supply number 2, J7. Power supply number 1, J7. Doesn't matter if you get these backwards, because like I said earlier, these things are only amplifying audio now. They're not doing anything else. So if you got them backwards, nothing's going to get heard. I will make a power pigtail that'll go from here on your new power supply down to, there's two 3-pin headers on the transformer assembly that provide AC to the cabinet for fans and fluorescent lights and anything else to that effect. So I'll make that nice and plug and play too, so you don't have to cut and hack anything. As far as the rest of the wiring goes, I hope you were taking pictures, because there's a lot to put back. And I know this was a little bit of a pain in the butt, but unfortunately this is what you had to do to get this game working right. Now these wires, they've been in that cabinet for 40 years. So they should kind of lie back down the way you took them out. So there's not going to be a whole hell of a lot of guesswork here. Like this harness, this is primarily transformer assembly stuff. Should be really easy. All that white, black, green, that's all AC, 120 volts. There's your video connector. That white connector right there with the red one right behind it, that's your video. So like I said, man, it should be relatively easy to put all this stuff back, but I do hope you were taking pictures. Unless you want to fly me out to California whenever it's allowed again. So yeah, hopefully all that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, I'll try to answer any questions you have. And good luck.